Hey there, Mike again. Welcome back. This one is going to be pretty short, I hope. It's again about air compressors and CFM versus PSI with tool demonstration. So you can actually see the impact, and it'll help you decide if you think you might want to add an auxiliary tank to your compressor. And I have a video on that if you want to go check it out, on how to very cheaply make yourself an auxiliary tank. If you don't want to buy one, you can make one with an old propane tank. But anyway, hopefully this will help you decide if you really need one or not, because CFM and PSI go hand in hand. When you've got 100 PSI, 90 PSI, whatever you want to call it, when you start using air, the PSI goes down a little bit. It's just like electricity. If you have a normal house that had some regular light bulbs, incandescent, not LED or fluorescent, remember the days where your dryer kicked in, or the air conditioning, or a table saw, or something that used a lot of current, the lights might dim a little bit. Same thing, you know, when your CFM on your air compressor goes up, the PSI is going to come down. Just like the amps on electricity, the voltage goes down. So I'm going to demonstrate here how it affects. Now, some people, all you use a compressor for is maybe a little bit of painting, filling up your car tires, things like that. For you, it probably doesn't matter. But if you get into impact wrenches, plasma cutters, sandblasting, anything that die grinders, anything that uses a lot of air, that's going to have a major effect on your tools. And as far as how long you can cut, or how long you can use the wrench, or however. So give me a second here, and I'm going to show you a quick demonstration. Quick video to show you how much pressure drops when you use a lot of CFM at the same time. And it's going to be comparing the big tank by itself, the normal 20 gallon, and then adding on some auxiliary tanks. This is just the tank, and here's the impact wrench. Watch this. So it drops it from about 110 to 80. It's about 30 pounds. But I have another gauge here at the connected to the wrench, and it's going to drop even more after it gets through that hole. When you see at the end of the 50-foot line, down to about 50. Okay, so now I have the auxiliary tanks hooked up. That's about another 11 or 12 gallons. I have a 20-pound propane tank and a 30-pound. The 20-pound holds about 4.5 to 5 gallons of air, and the 30 about 7, maybe a little over 7, so about 11 or 12 pounds or gallons. And we're still at that 110, remember? And it dropped 30 before, went down to 80. Now here it is with the impact wrench again. Did you see that? Barely dropped about 5. Went from about 110 to about 115, and it'll come back up there in a second. So it lost almost nothing, maybe 5. And it's almost back up there. And over on this one, the one at the tool, now remember it went down about almost to 50, because you have to include all the air going through 50 feet of hose, the air dryer, water catch, and the tanks, and so on. So now let's see how much this drops. Down to about 70. So as you can tell, when you have more CFM available, it does a lot more. I'll explain this more in the preamble and the after this. Even with low volume devices like an air gun or a tire inflator, like this, it will still make a difference. For instance, still at 110, just the main tank. Lost about 10, got down to about 100. And let's see. It's dropped down to about, come on, almost between 105 and 110. And we'll hook up the other tank and let you see. Okay, so now, like I said, we're between 105 and 110. And now with the other tanks, the same air gun, it didn't barely even move. What, it moved about 1 PSI? So there you have it. I'll explain more after. Okay, well, you saw the demonstrations, and you saw, like with the impact wrench, and I use that because that uses probably the most air. The tank by itself, you have to remember that the regulator is a choke point. It doesn't allow full flow. There are some regulators out there that you can buy and add on, take out the one you have on your compressor and add this one, a better one to it. But the normal $200 to $300 air compressor that you buy, that regulator doesn't push full flow. So as you saw, I would go starting at 115 PSI. And when I pulled the trigger, that dropped it down to like 80, from 110 to 80. That's like a 30 PSI drop because that impact wrench wants a lot of air. It'll take as much as I can give it, up to about 6 CFM is what it wants. But then when you saw, I added my 11 to 12 gallons extra of air in the tanks. Because that is after the regulator, those tanks will give the air as fast as it wants it, as fast as your tool will take it. And there's nothing restricting it because hoses can handle about 20 to 25 CFM. And there's not that much restriction in my air dryers and things like that. So, but if you noticed, all of a sudden it went from about 110 to about 105. It only dropped about, or maybe 95 to, it only dropped like 10 to 15 PSI. And then in the second video, or when I showed you with just the tire inflator, even with just the tank by itself, it started at about 110 and it went down to about, what was it, about 100. So it dropped about 10 PSI, and that's just using a little bit of air from that. But yet when I added the other tanks, it didn't even move barely, right? It went from like 110 to like 107, 108. As a matter of fact, I think it was started off a little lower too. It was started at like 107 and it went to like 105. I mean, it didn't do anything. And that's because I have basically another 12 gallons of air at full flow. I mean, it would give it at 25 CFM if it needs it up to that. That's what the hoses can handle, because it goes right from that tank, that auxiliary tank. It's in parallel with the main hose, the 50-footer, which is in parallel to the main tank, except that main tank has that regulator on it. So here it was taking the air from that impact wrench or from the tire inflator. It was getting it from full flow just about from that extra tank. And as you saw, the PSI didn't do anything. And if you've ever used impact wrenches and die grinders and any air tool, you have your static pressure and then your working pressure. So you have your static sitting at, say, 100. Your tool wants 90, but you can't put it at 90 because as soon as you pull the trigger, it drops to like 80 or 70. So you have to set it for like 110 or 100, 110, so that when you pull the trigger, you can get back down to around 90. Well, having the extra air tank on there, you don't have to set that PSI as high. Instead of 110 to get 90, maybe you only have to set it for 95 or 100. Obviously you have to test it on your tool, how long your hoses are, how many, do you have desiccant dryers and water traps and all that other stuff on your tool. And do you have high flow connectors, or do you have just regular standard air connectors? All that you have to figure out. But the point is, you're not going to have to set that PSI as high, which means now you've got two advantages here. You get all the cubic feet per minute of air that your tool wants, but you also get more time because you have that external tank, so it's going to be able to work a lot longer. So anyway, that's all I wanted to show. Just that when you use a lot more CFMs, the CFMs go up, the PSIs are going to come down. So if you can go ahead and give it a source, like an external tank, that will give you full flow CFMs, and whatever the hose can handle, 25 CFM, then your tool, you're not going to be dropping your PSI, which means your compressor is not going to be kicking on that much sooner. And you'll be able to do your job longer, whether it be an impact wrench or plasma cutter, sandblasting, whatever. And you can get things done a lot quicker. Whereas if you had just a regular tank, I got to crank it all the way up to say 135, whatever my compressor can do. But as soon as I pull the trigger just to get it down to the 90, because that's what I want it to work at, 90, I hold that trigger for just on that impact wrench for 10 seconds, let go. I don't even have 135 in my tank anymore. It's down to like 120. So from that point on, I'm obviously going to be lower in CFM or lower in PSIs than my tool wants to be, the working pressure. So anyway, I hope this helps. Check out my channel, throw a like up there, subscribe, pass it around, and have a good day. Talk to you later. Bye.